The ANC will hold its January 8 statement virtually tomorrow, and this is due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The event in a crucial election year is expected to set the tone for the rest of 2021 while the party grapples with factional battles. But let's discuss this further now with Matlala Setlalogile, a political risk analyst. Good to have you with us this afternoon, Matlala. Is January 8th still as relevant as perhaps it was a century ago or even 50 years ago?
Afternoon, Tammy. The January 8th statement still remains relevant for the African National Congress. Look, about a century or so ago, when it started, the tradition I think started during the ANC's 60th year. It was relevant then to remind those who were members of the ANC why was the ANC formed and what has the ANC achieved thus far and what is willing or rather preparing itself to achieve, which was the liberation of the majority of South Africans. Now, in this context where the ANC is the governing party, it remains very relevant and significant in terms of setting the tone for ANC action within governance structures. Look, the fact that this year's January 8th will be conducted virtually does not necessarily take anything away from the significance of the statement. Before the ANC was a governing party, when it was banned, the January 8th statement was usually transmitted through Radio Freedom, through pamphlets and everything. So filling up stadiums, it's not necessarily the core of the January 8th statement, even though in the current context is usually used to measure the amount of support that the incumbent president of the time has. But it remains relatively significant, whether it's done purposefully in terms of really pushing whatever it is contained in the January 8th statement, actioning it within government, that's another thing. It's significant, but now it has been reduced to a more of an academic procedural issue because of the ANC's failure to translate many of their promises or commitments into action within government.
And with that in mind, what you've just said now, the fact that the ANC seems to have failed in translating its ideologies and its ideas into, practical tangibles, what should the president of the African National Congress actually be addressing come January 8th?
Look, firstly, the current context of the COVID-19 pandemic. I suspect that the ANC will address immediate concern, as they had earlier indicated, the safety of healthcare workers in terms of ensuring PPEs and vaccinations are available for them. But more significant, the fact that the COVID-19 pandemic has actually, brought to the fore and exacerbated the inequalities and the poverty levels that are prevalent in the country. So the main issues that I suspect the January 8th statement will cover is employment issues, job creation. I think that has been a cross-cutting theme for the past few years. I think even if you go to a decade back, job creation has been top of the agenda. They are likely to address issues of poverty levels, eradication of poverty, because remember what the COVID-19 pandemic has done. The COVID-induced lockdowns have pushed some people into poverty and has actually exacerbated the poverty levels of those who are already experiencing poverty. But government, or at least the ANC, is very much aware that for these things to be translated into tangible outcomes, we would require a capable state. If you remember very well, one of the main tasks for the ANC in last year's January 8 statement was that of creating a capable state. I think this will still be amongst those issues that the ANC will focus on. Remember, the pace in which the ANC government has responded to the pandemic, coupled with the lack of implementations of the many plans that they have introduced in the past, especially when we look at the economic recovery plan that is not something substantially new, but a reiteration of what was already on the table. So the ANC will emphasize on the implementation aspect, and that speaks to a capable state. And I think, the state capacity will be one of the key issues that the ANC focuses on. So it will be job creation, poverty, eradication or elimination and alleviation, and state capacity. But for that to happen, you need an ANC that is in touch with its moral responsibilities.
And that, Matlala, that comes to my next question there, where a capable state needs a capable party. Now, one of the focuses, according to the president, is the issue of unity within the party. How is he going to broker that? He himself has acknowledged that the issue of unity is once again just rearing its head and is very much at the forefront of the party's issues and problems.
Look, I think since Ramaphosa ascended to the presidency of the ANC in Nazareth, unity has been one song that has been sung. The reality is that the divisions within the ANC are not necessarily ideological. Yes, the ANC is a pro-church, but they have resolutions that the different sections of the party, even with that different ideological perspective, have agreed on. The challenge is here, the divisions within the ANC are more along the lines of self-interest. And this self-interest are not necessarily aligned to the interests of society at large. So fostering unity within the ANC will be very difficult. In fact, I do not think that is possible to actually foster unity within the ANC if the main divisions within the ANC are caused by self-interest more than anything else.
And if you could just recap for us the allegations around Secretary General Ace Magashule, who has refused to step down despite the existing regulations. Just a recap of that and how the party has actually dealt with this.
Look, I do not think that, firstly, I do not think that the SG, Secretary General of the ANC, will step down. In as much there has been a resolution that those who are accused of serious corruption allegations must step down, while those judicial processes or prosecutional processes are unfolding. The ANC itself, the NEC, in one of the briefings that happened towards the end of last year, they acknowledged that they have not developed any framework to implement that kind of resolution. Because we've seen the slow pace of the National Prosecuting Authority in terms of handling matters. I think the Zandile Gumede issue is one that comes to mind. Then how do you make someone step aside while the National Prosecuting Authority drops the ball? Hence, it opens space for some to even suggest that state apparatus is used to settle political scores. But the challenges, or rather the charges that have been brought forward against Ace Magashule are very serious in nature. I do not know the merits of the case. In fact, I do not want to comment on the merits of the case. But for someone so senior to be accused of actually siphoning funds that were meant to improve the lives of South Africans in that manner remains quite a serious offense. Yeah.
Now, yesterday, with the meeting that the ANC held with the NEC to discuss January 8th, there was the presence of former presidents Jacob Zuma, as well as the presence of former President Thabo Mbeki. What type of contribution do you believe they would have made to the content of the January 8th statement? We see here with the statement saying that they helped to shape the direction and they also helped to shape the content of the statement. If you could highlight what their likely contribution would have been.
I think from previous reports, we would remember that Jacob Zuma was reported to attend NEC meetings and does not make any sort of contributions but stands there. That could have been seen as, in the early stages of Ramaphosa's presidency, that could have been seen as a tactic of sorts to intimidate those who have, in a way, betrayed him according to his perspective. But with the presence of Thabo Mbeki, Look, Thabo Mbeki, for a while, especially under the presidency of Jacob Zuma, distanced himself, claiming that he does not want to be seen as trying to rule from the grave. I think he realizes that, look, the current context or challenges that face South Africa or confront South Africa need as much input as possible. So I would see Thabo Mbeki's contribution being around the policy trajectory of the ANC, not necessarily trying to interfere in the factional or differences that exist or the operational aspects of the party, but contributing mostly to the policy trajectory of the party.
In your view, do you believe the battle against COVID-19 in South Africa right now has been beneficial for South Africa's relationship with the African National Congress or not? Has the fight against COVID-19 made the African National Congress stronger in the eyes of South Africans, or the converse?
Look, Tammy, as I've indicated previously, that look, COVID-19 caught a lot of governments, across the globe of guard. But the reality is that even though no one knows precisely how to manage, or initially didn't know how to manage the pandemic, we have had the pandemic for over a year now. At least the ANC government understands what needs to be done. But the challenge here is that even though there were strategies and plans put in place and communicated with South Africans, they were not implemented properly. And I think this is where most South Africans feel a bit undone by the current leadership. And it doesn't help that the ANC is trying to do this in a context filled with fake news or alternative facts, as we might not, we might know. I mean, there's conspiracy theories doing the rounds about 5G, vaccines and everything. But the fact that the ANC is trying to manage this pandemic within that context, and the fact that the ANC deploys, at the end of the day, there's an ANC government. They have failed to implement some of the response mechanisms that they had intended to do. So from that perspective, I would believe that the ANC has lost itself a bit of support, because this pandemic does not happen in a vacuum. It happens or unfolds in a setting where South Africans were already being, disgruntled about the state of affairs, the economy, the joblessness, the poverty levels and everything. So as I had indicated as well earlier, that look, COVID-19 has exacerbated the existing challenges. So the concerns from this pandemic are actually an addition to pre-existing concerns that society had at large. And the fact that, there was issues around PPE funds and all of those could not have done the ANC any favors.
And we'll leave it at that for this afternoon. Thank you so much, Matlala, for your insight as we make our way to the ANC's 109th birthday come January 8. That's Matlala Setlalogile, political risk analyst.